So, if you ever see somebody put water down, that's fine, very little. Then I'm going to turn my wheel on. If I'm going counterclockwise, that means I'm right-handed. If I'm going clockwise, that means I'm left-handed. Are there any lefties in here? Sweet. And you know how to throw, so, and you're lefty? Okay. So I'm going to push straight down. My wheel's going. My head's not in the way. Is it on the screen? Nice. Just kidding. You see my bald spot? Then I'd be all embarrassed. Anyways, I'm going to push down, and my pinkies are going to seal up at the bottom. Now you can see it's still wobbling. I'm not trying to get it completely centered because there's a process to that. Now, elbow's going to come in. I'm going to push at 7 o'clock. And that's going to start to move that up. Then I'm going to I'm going to assist with my right hand here. That's going to keep moving that up. So as I assist, I squeeze, I let out a little bit of the pressure, but I still hold my hand steady and in one spot. And then I get to the top and I hold steady, but my pressure is very light. So we're talking like, let's say, an 8 pressure, 4 to 5 pressure, 1 to 2 pressure up at the top. All right. Now I'm going to bring this down. My left hand, if this is centered, or center, my left thumb is going to go right next to that. My right hand is going to go on center, but touch my thumb. Okay? If you are not touching your hands together, you're going to kind of bounce around. So, and I like to hold my sponge up right here where my thumb and my index finger connect. And then I'm going to start to press that down. My right hand is pointed up just a little bit. And as I push down, my left hand swells out. It's holding the clay so it knows where to go, but it doesn't push back. So as the clay hits my hand swells out. And then I get down there and I'm going to refine it. It's not completely centered, so I'm going to keep my hands in those same spots. I'm going to push in. My right hand stays on top, but it's not aggressively pushing down. Now I'm going to push down. My left hand stays on the side. Back in and back down. I know it's centered. And if it takes a little longer, that's okay. Now I'm going to open it, create this little knob there with my thumb, and I create a scoop. So my index finger goes on my thumbnail, my middle finger goes next to it, and I bend my fingers, and I'm going to create this scoop that goes down to the bottom. If I feel like I'm dragging or there's dry clay, take my hands off, add a little bit of water, and then go back and finish that. Nice and slow, nice and controlled. Take the water out. You can measure this. This wheel's not stopping all the way. Put a needle tool in there, put your thumb or your finger down there, whatever thickness that is. That's good for a bowl, maybe a little less if you're not going to be trimming it up like a bottle or a vase. Sometimes with a bowl I'll go a little bit more. So I'm going to close up that hole and push down just a little bit. All right, if I have a thin spot up top here, I want to make sure that I round that out before I move on. And I'm just going to do that by holding steady with my left hand. And I'm just going to gently push down with my right hand. Now remember, clay likes you to be in control, but have your movements be slow. If I just come in here and push down, I create a wobble. So I need to just slowly push that clay. And if I say something and it doesn't make sense, let me know. I'll say it some other way. I'm going to pull towards me. I'm making a cylinder. So my ring finger and my middle finger are going to pull towards my thumb. My thumb is not actively pulling back. I'm not squishing together. I'm just pulling towards my thumb. So as it comes out, pull, and then I slow down right there. My inside should be straight up and down, if not curved in just a little bit. And my outside should be straight up and down. Take the water out. Now, if you're getting cracking, and I don't have any cracking on this piece, but I did last class period, so if you're getting cracking, you should compress this rim. Now, sometimes we don't get cracking now, but when we lift this up, because we're stretching it out again, we're going to get cracking. So, I'm going to compress the rim by just holding steady with my thumb and my index finger and pressing down with my sponge. And again, I just hold there with a little bit of pressure. And that's going to compress that clay. All right, now we're going to lift this up. I'm going to drop here at, so this is 3, that's 4, so 4:30, 5 o'clock. My index finger and my thumb are going to pinch. My thumbs are going to touch, and I'm basically creating this claw where I'm pushing in with my index finger to my index finger through the clay while my thumbs are stabilizing. Now I like to use a sponge in between. So I'm going to pinch, grab that clay, it's going to start to move, okay? And I'm going to, on this first pull, lift up a little bit and tip my right hand in. As you're doing this, I want you to think about where your pressure goes. If you have, let's say, 100% pressure with your right hand and 100% pressure with your left hand, they're going to be fighting against each other. So you want to, whichever direction you're going, reduce your pressure. So if I'm going out, my outside hand has stabilizing pressure but no force. My inside hand, if I'm going in, does the same thing. So kind of keep that in mind as you're going. If you are, again, actively pushing, it's going to be a problem. How many of you were, when you were a kid, or maybe you do this to a little brother or sister, or a niece or a nephew, or the neighbor kid, and they come up to you and you put your hand on their head and they're fighting against you? Anyone ever do that? And then you let go and they fall? It's the same thing. You're pushing, they're pushing. When you release, they go flying. It's kind of funny. Okay, we're going to lift this up. If your index finger fits there, great. If not, get your middle finger down there. And I'm going to pinch at the bottom. Thumbs are going to touch. I'm going to push under. And it's really important that you practice pushing under. That's going to get that extra clay off the bottom. And you see how there's this little rim there? Okay, that little rim is going to allow me to lift. Now, if I lift straight up, I'm going to go out. Okay? So as I lift, my middle finger's there. My middle finger is just slightly above my let me rephrase that. My middle finger on my inside hand is slightly above my outside hand. And as I get closer to the top, I rotate in as I keep lifting up. How skinny you make it is up to you. If I'm going to make a bottle or a vase, I want to keep my rim in pretty small, even though I'm going to come in here and stretch it out. Go back down here. This is where it gets a little sketchy because our elbow's up. So make sure your elbow's up and your right arm is really firm. All the stabilization comes between your fingers. Lift that up. When I get to the top, I'm going to just gently coax that rim in, because I want it pretty straight up and down. Okay, if you have a hard time getting your clay to move from the bottom, after you do a couple, if it starts getting thin at top and it's still really thick at the bottom, it's almost impossible to pull that thick clay all the way up. So I'm going to recommend that you just trim it off and then maybe do one more pull. And you do that with a wood knife or a wood rib, and you do it right in front of you. And I'm going to start it here But if you see, I'm pushing down and peeling away the clay. I'm not coming here and peeling the clay up. So, if you can see it out here, straight down, I'm gonna peel that away. Oh, I stuck to that. Some people. Wowzers. It's a good thing we're gonna make another. And let me explain just what happened, and I should have done this better. I should have cleaned off my tool, and I should have gotten it wet. What happened is the dryness of the clay on my tool hit the dryness there, and it stuck to it. Had there been water on this, it wouldn't have done that. Let's see if we can fix it. I don't think we can, but maybe we can. I'm just gonna hold steady and push my rib up. And every failure or flop is the opportunity to learn something. It's not bad. You know what? You'd drink out of it. Somebody would drink out of this. Here's my wire tool. Okay, let's do another one. And then we will, what time is it? Yeah, good. So, if you think about how I've showed you how to seal this and start to get this centered, let me show you how I do 1.5 pounds of clay, which is this. So instead of pushing straight down and sealing it with both hands, I'm going to push straight down with my karate chop and seal it. And then I go straight into coating, bring that down, bring it up again. One more time because it's biting just a tiny bit. And that's centered. So I center with one hand, basically, with my right hand on top, instead of coning it all the way up and doing all of those things. That's 1.5 pounds of clay. I can do that with 2 pounds for my size of hand. I get into 3 pounds, 4 pounds, 5 pounds, I've got to go back to the other way for sure, because I can't do all of that with one hand. So if whatever you're doing is not working, if you want to try it this way, you can. Also, when I open with my sponge. I'm still creating a scoop, but the sponge squishes out water, which means I don't ever have to lift my hands up. Okay, we go there, and I'm going to pull this. I just added some water. I'm going to pull this straight towards me. Right there. And I'm going to compress the bottom. If you are not compressing and drying out the bottom, you're asking for some problems. The biggest problem, cracking. The second biggest problem, if your bottom is soggy and you go to lift up your clay, especially if you're going with a bigger piece, it's going to wobble like this when it gets thinner. And you don't want that. I don't know, maybe you do, but I doubt it. Okay, we're going to push in. That first push really moves towards the center. When we get to the rim, always hold steady. I'm going to do that again. Push under. Remember, if we're not pushing under and lifting, we're not moving clay. And so a lot of you, what you'll do is you'll push and you'll just start to lift, and you keep that skirt there. And so you've got to push and hold in one spot, and then you're going to lift it. So those of you who are like, I know how to throw cylinders, think about what you want me to show you in just a second, and I'll do one or two things that we can go over that are a little bit more advanced. Okay, it's going straight up. I like to tilt that in just a little bit. I call it training. So you train the rim to go in. Then come at the bottom, do one more pull up. My inside hand is just slightly above my outside hand. Get to the top and move. And slowly let go. Now a theory on ribbing with our metal ribs is if we have a flat side, we're going to use the round part of our rib. And if we have a round part on our clay, we're going to use the flat side. Or if it's going in, the round part goes out, we use the flat side. The round part goes in, we use the round side. So that looks like this. This is straight up and down, so flat. I'm just going to use the round side. Compress that. And it's pretty straight on. Okay, a little bit of a bend, but not much. So what I mean by that is like this. So pretty straight on. We don't want it to be really bent. If it gets really bent, it tends to stick. Okay, so we're going to do that. And anytime you're going to shape, you should rib first. That compresses the clay. Even though we're going to get it wet again. Okay, I'm going to shape, and so I'm going to push out and then come back in. As I do that, it's the same when I'm going to start to lift, but then my inside hand is going to go slightly below my outside hand. So whichever, whichever direction I'm going, if I'm going out, my outside hand is above. If I'm going in, my inside hand is above. Add a little bit of water. So I'm going to grab this clay, I'm going to push out. My inside hand is below. And right here, I'm going to bring my inside hand above. Okay, now we have a little bit of body happening there. And then back to the theory on ribbing. It's a round body, so I'm going to use the flat part of my rib. And I'm just going to hold that. And here, I can either flip it to the round side or I can tilt it, so I'm only getting a little bit. So instead of being straight up and down, I'll tilt it so I'm not digging in. Like that. Take the water out. If you want to shape it a little bit more, there's lots of ways to do this. Add some water here. I'm going to push in just a little bit there. And then I'm going to support and pull that out. So we kind of have kind of that classic vase shape. Right?
Do you ever rib the inside of your piece?
No. You can, and I know people who do. I actually know people who pull, as they're lifting, they pull with two ribs, one on the inside, one on the outside. So they're like lifting and shaping that way, and it gives it a nice compressed feel to it. I don't, except for on bowls. So anything that's going to be wide, I rib the inside and the outside. But you can. I just don't like to. I have to rethink that. I'm trying to think if sometimes when my piece is bigger, so if I'm doing 6 or 8 or 10 pounds of clay, I might rib the inside as well because I want everything to be really compact before I shape it.
Yeah.
Okay, we can clean up that rim. I'm just going to use a sponge, but you can use a paper towel. Make that smooth. Dry your hands. Oh, before I do that, clean up the bottom. The wood knife, wood rib. the more you clean up and take clay off now, the less you have to trim. And I love trimming, but if it takes too long to trim, you're not throwing efficiently. Now, as a beginner, efficient is a totally weird concept. I'm gonna push down, pull this towards me, make sure my hands are dry. I'm gonna lift this up and set this over here. Okay, those of you who are comfortable with throwing cylinders, what do you want me to throw now? We got one more thing to throw, maybe two. No one wants to see anything? So let me ask you this. How many of you are thinking about being on the wheel the first round?
Throw a dome.
Throw a
Dome.
sphere?
Or donut.
Donut. So raise your hands again if you're gonna be on the wheel the first time. 1, 2, 3, 4. We need a few more than that. 5, 6, 7. Okay, that's about right. We have 14 wheels. There's 20 people in class, so we need to have at least 6 or 7, at least 7 or 8. Okay. You know what? I will show you a donut. So, a donut can be fun. It can also be really frustrating. So when we open a donut, we're going to open all the way to the bottom. Like so. I'm going to pull that out just a little bit. And I'm a little bit off center, so I'm going to push down and in. That should be good. Gonna take the water out of the inside. Now there's nothing down there, but you don't want a ton of water soaking in still. Now, I'm gonna split this. So I'm just gonna push straight down using my sponge. Okay, so I've split it. A little bit further down. And then I'm going to lift on the inside. So the inside I'm going to lift up. About right there. You've got to keep it fairly thick because you're going to bend it in a minute. And if it's too thin, it creates problems. Now on the outside, I'm going to lift that up. Right there. And get my sponge in there to take that water out. Okay, so from here, I'm going to, then there's a couple of ways of doing this effectively. If I just push this over, it's going to touch down here. So I've got to push up and over. But this one, I'm going to bend first. So I'm just holding that.
You're just opening it at the top, yeah.
Yeah, like so. And now I'm going to lift this a little bit more water. Bye. And lift that up and over. want to dry it just a little bit. It's wet enough, and then I'm going to push them together. And this is where it gets a little sketchy. So it's hollow. Right? Is that what you said? Yes, it's hollow. Now, once you get it sealed, you can come in with your sponge or your rib and because there's air in there, you can press on it pretty firmly and the air presses back. Push too hard, I'll pop that seam, and I don't want that. But the bottom has extra clay, so I'll be able to trim that up. And the top, I want to round out pretty well right now. Hopefully that stays. If there's cracks anywhere, it'll be right on that seam.
So from this point, you probably can't bring it out again, can you?
Out where?
Just like towards you, like make the hole in the center bigger.
No. So you would make it bigger if you want it wider.
Mm-hmm. And shorter as well.
Mm-hmm. Although a taller donut's going to be a little bit easier than a wider donut because getting smaller amounts of clay to come up and connect is going to be harder to do.
Mm-hmm.
I had more play here.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm gonna clean up under there. And then I'll be able to trim that fairly round later. And how I do that, I can flip it and put lugs. I can also throw out a pad of clay so it'll just kind of stick to it. Or you can throw out like a wide bowl and stick it in there, and you can trim that. So those are kind of complex, kind of fun to play around with. Okay, we have 23 minutes. Talk really quickly about criteria again. On hand building, you need to create some sort of a face or portrait. It needs to have some anatomy to it, like facial qualities. And we're going to spend about 4 class periods doing that. So that's Tuesday, Monday, Wednesday, Friday of next week. So plan on being done then. We will look at it on Wednesday and kind of see where everyone's at. I can push it out to 5 days, but if we're all working and not, let me say it this way. So sometimes some people might pick a project that's too big for the time frame. Okay? And if everyone but 2 people pick projects that fit into 4 days, and yours is a 6-day project, we can work through that a little bit, but for the most part, it's on you to come in on your own time and work on it. If it's bigger, if it's detailed, if there's more of them, whatever that is, you need to do that kind of self-modification all on your own. Yeah, so just think about it that way. But, so we'll spend 4 days, we'll work, it should be good. And then wheel throwers, you need to be pushing yourself in any direction. So if you're fairly new at the wheel, you're centering, you're opening, you're making cylinders, right? If you're fairly accomplished or you feel like you're accomplished, You need to be making more, you need to be making thinner, you need to be making bigger, similar. You choose kind of how that looks. And at the end, I want everyone on the wheel. So hand builders, you're going to spend 4 days. After those 4 days, you're going to come on the wheel. So you're going to get an option, the opportunity one way or the other. But everyone needs to save at least one piece. Most of you on the wheel, I would say save 3 or 4. And you can practice trimming, you can practice other things with them. I don't want you to save 3 or 4, maybe 2 pieces. And something that I want you to pay attention to, don't save your first piece. Now you can save it so you can manipulate it, but don't save it and go, look, this is my first, best, and only piece, and I'm done. Take what you did and make it better. That's the goal of learning this. So you're going to save one piece. That way you have a piece that you can play around with. You can underglaze it. You can overglaze it. Whatever. Those of you who no, it's not a those of you. And then from there on the wheel, we'll start to add some bigger things to it. And I don't know what those are yet. We can talk about those as we are getting through where you want the next wheel project to go. It just depends. So, okay. Any questions? Is that clear enough on what's required? So today, the rest of the day, you should, with your hand-built projects, clean them up. You can wrap them up. You can mess around with them. On Thursday, those of you who are going to be hand building, you need to have an idea, and it should be on paper. It can be a printout. It can be, it can even be on your phone, although I'm not a big fan of that because if it's on paper, you can come in and manipulate it instantly and be like, I'm going to push this out. I'm going to add a handle here. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do that. You can't really do that on your phone. But you need to have an idea ready to go so that when you start, I can come around, you can talk me through your idea, and we can kind of work through your 4-day project from there. You don't have to do more than one piece. You can do more than one piece, but when you're done, you have to spend the time, and it has to look like you have pushed your understanding of sculptural whatever. Cool? Ish? If you can't come up with you can come up with an idea. Everyone can come up with an idea. So, anything else I need to answer? It does not have to look like a human in the fact of, it doesn't have to be realistic. So I showed you lots of examples today. It can be geometric, it can be very, very abstract, it can be very plain. So don't get too confused. If you need ideas, search up simple ceramic sculptures. Now, I'll just preface this. If you search simple ceramic figures or body sculptures, you are probably going to get some nude depictions. So keep that in mind. Whatever your, I don't even know what to say. Whatever your, yeah. If it bothers you, don't look those things up. So if it doesn't bother you, great, right? If it's going to bother your parents, don't look it up. So, okay. Ready to go. Work on your stuff. That's the rest of the day. Make sure you clean up extra well so that the tables are pretty cleaned off.
Okay, so since I was gone last week,